man, got that tractor beam out of commission, or this is gonna be a real short trip. Okay, hit it!
All right.
We're on, I think, and hopefully everyone can hear us because poor Jason. I find it ironic that the guy who works with sound for a living is the one who unfortunately has so many issues with StreamYard when it comes to audio stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
StreamYard isn't kind to some at times, but yeah,
no,
we're here, and I think we get some good stuff to talk about, some good stuff to cover. So I'm looking forward to it.
it's hopefully, and I'm doing something a little different tonight as far as like how you guys see the presentation. So bear with me if I don't know what I'm doing. It's actually been a while since I've done this show and also just driven a show by myself. I'm lazy by nature, so I tend to make Matt do it when we do Shelter in Space. But I don't think I have that many slides, if I'm honest, even though I literally just finished this. But I'm hoping that even though we don't have a lot to talk about, the things we do have to talk about are certainly worthy of talking about.
Okay.
I will have at least one set of art prints that are quite old, but I was really excited to show them when they did release. So old, in fact, that I think my order of the prints just shipped, so I should be getting them soon. But I really liked them, and we're all big fans of Andor, so I still wanted to show them off, even though they've been sold out for quite a while. In case anyone wants to try to find them, either artist proofs eventually that I'm sure the artist will get, or on the secondary market. But I think what I wanted to start with was pickups. And selfishly, I only have my pickups because Jay, I don't remember you getting a lot of prints at Celebration.
No, I didn't make any purchases. I definitely scooped up the panel ones. Then there was the app-based bounty print for the Mando. Um, and there was the Twi'lek one. Do you remember the one that had like that 70s vibe to it?
Yep.
Yeah, there was that one. But no, I did take a stroll through Artist Alley too, and actually there's quite a few things that caught my fancy. But it's one of those like, hey, we'll grab lunch and come back, or you get caught up speaking with an artist and just, hey, pleasure to meet you, love your work, etc. And things kind of get away from you. And there was one I was telling Matt today too. I don't want to stay too much on the topic because I know we get a few things to look at.
No, it's
But
okay.
I told Matt today, I said, well, I came across this comic booth that the guy had prints in the back. I think I might have told you. So basically, it was like spend X amount, get this size, spend X amount, get that size. And they had this print, which was probably really campy and cheesy for most. But I don't know why, I just loved it. It was basically a Vader print that was Anakin and Vader. And did you see that one?
Yeah. What's interesting? Yeah, I wish I would have thrown up or tried to find a photo of it because it wasn't. Was the print also a comic cover?
No, so it wasn't a comic. Well, I could be wrong, actually. Don't quote me on that. I don't think it was a comic cover, but it was basically it was very reminiscent. If so, there's this artist that goes by Insane 51. He's actually quite popular. He started off in like the graffiti world, and he does these like large murals, and now he does like branding and packaging. So basically, he does things that have two elements. Either you can use like old school 3D glasses, or you can buy these lights that basically it'll turn. It's on a motor, and the light will shift and show a red light and a blue light as it turns every like 3 minute rotations. And basically, by doing that, it gives the 3D effect of like closing one eye, not the other. So this print in red, if you closed your left eye and looked through the red cell of the glasses, it was Anakin. And then, or blue, and then if you close the other eye and look through the blue cell, it was Vader. Or like I said, colors vice versa. But most may look at that as cheesy, but it was really well executed because you didn't really see them both in the image, but they were very, very clear on their own. And it was Vader was in this like, sort of Rogue One pose where he was like striking, And then as Anakin, he was like Anakin, and it just was really well executed. So it was like, hey, spend 50 pounds and you get like an 18 by 24. And you know me, that's a sweet spot because like 11 by 17 is a little on the small side, 24 by 36 becomes a little cumbersome when you're trying to hang a lot of prints. So it was really perfect. And I wanted it so bad, but like, it was one of those things where, people got hungry. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. And I was kind of gutted that I missed out on that one. But otherwise, most of the pieces are, you can search for them on eBay or hit up the artists or whatever. But I'm kind of bummed that I missed out on that one. And I wish I caught the artist's name.
Well, if it helps, I saw that, but I was trying to be good about purchases considering I had just bought a print that I'm actually going to show, even though I'm roping it in as like a celebration pickup, even though I certainly did not buy it during celebration. It's just a print that I've been looking for. I'm not going to say grail because that word's overused, of course. And also the print hasn't been out very long. I think it released last year, but it was one that was very popular. Everyone wanted their hands on it. No one was just selling them. So it was like right before celebration, a few people offered theirs up and I managed to get one. I don't have it in hand. I'm still paying for it technically, but I want to show it here. So that's another reason why I was very conservative with my purchases, at least when it came to
Okay.
art celebration, because I knew I had just bought one that I really did enjoy. So at least in my mind, I'm considering it a celebration pickup because I'll always associate that print with the fact that I bought it when I was over in celebration. But that red and blue, I saw it. I didn't look at it too closely. The booth was really busy when I walked by, but that does seem. I do agree with you that the image was quite clear, regardless of the glasses. So if I do find that, like the artist and the work, I'll go ahead and post that in our Facebook group. If you're not in the Facebook group, I think most people are, but if you're not, go ahead and check it out. It's the same name as the channel, but without further ado, I'll mention the one print I did technically buy at Celebration, because I have gotten asked this question a few times about the Celebration exclusives, and I'll be
Okay.
totally honest with you. In years past, I haven't been terribly impressed with the Celebration exclusives. Like I didn't buy any in Anaheim, but the one that I did like in Anaheim was by Malcolm Tween. So I think this was a return to form for him. And funny enough, so I think it was last week, my mom found a link to all the exclusives, the Celebration exclusives, and she sent me a picture of this and was like, "Did you buy this one?" And I
Oh,
said, "Yes,
nice.
I did." And she was like, "Good idea, because this is the one I liked." So this was the Extraction Team Bravo. It was I honestly don't remember the scene specifically, but this was kind of filling in an unseen scene in Rogue One, where they went to I don't even remember the name of the planet, but I think he and Chris agrees and got a chance to talk to him. He really does a great job of incorporating ships. So last year he did the probe droid with Obi-Wan, and I think that was one of the more popular ones last year. So I'm really happy I got this. I'm going to try to incorporate it into like a Rogue One themed wall, which is going to be relevant to two other prints that we show tonight. But what were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I like this one for sure. I'm starting to like these sort of like landscape silhouette style pieces. I feel like they have a really good vibe to them, and I feel like they fit in a lot of different areas of a collection. Some of the ones that are really busy, I know, are more popular, but these ones are really landing home with me. Even the Pro Droid one, like the ones where you just have these, I don't want to say simple backgrounds, but it almost has like an ambient vibe to it.
Yeah, and I think that's why maybe Chris too likes Malcolm Tween's art style. Is I think he does a great job of those like kind of sweeping landscapes and also showcasing ships. So he did the Chris is really interested in, and I think he is going to get one that's features Jawas and the Sandcrawler. Uh, this one, obviously, he did one with the Imperial. Was it the shuttle
Yep.
that everyone liked? So I think the theme I'm seeing with Malcolm Tween is it tends to feature like I said, those like sweeping landscapes and ships, which for anyone who is appreciative of like the studio scale models, I think that's like this is something like this would be a perfect backdrop to a few studio scale models if you have them in your collection. But I'm a
Yeah,
sucker
it's definitely very fitting.
yeah, I'm a sucker for anything Rogue One. I will always not like the really wide borders on these though. I think I'm just gonna have to get over it. I do, as a souvenir of Celebration, I do appreciate that it has the logo, and this one's on the smaller side because it's interesting to see the exclusives and how they decide to incorporate the logo, and also how they handle having a border if they do have a border. Would I prefer this without the border and just the logo on the live art itself? Yes. Is it going to bother me a ton? No. I'll live. I'll survive. Um, and then the next one I have, which so Jay, I know you didn't buy any of the exclusives, but were you tempted by any of them besides this one?
Um, it's tough for me because image wise, yes, but then the thing I think about is, you know, how quickly is this something that I'd get framed up, or how quickly is this something I'd be looking to put on my wall? And that's the trouble part because visually there's plenty where I'm like, oh, this looks great. I'd love to have this. I want to get that. But then otherwise it's like, well, this is going to sit in a portfolio. I'm not going to, go and spend the money to get this framed. So I have to try to be disciplined from the collector's perspective
Mhm.
because, and I'm not bringing this up in an ill-spoken way, but if you take Matt, as an example, there's plenty that will never make it to the walls, but he has that affinity to be like, oh, this is a great looking image. I'm going to get on this. And then it just sits in a portfolio or two. And I got nothing against that. I
Mhm.
just, because I collect art outside of, you know, like art related IP, like properties such as, Star Wars and things like that, I really have to gauge and be careful as to like how many things I have stacking up and piling up that aren't going to be seen or enjoyed. So it's hard because there's a lot of things I respond to and I enjoy visually, but I just know it's never going to make it onto the wall. So that's a tricky part for me. So yeah. Um, and in the moment too, when you're like at Celebration, it's hard. You see these pieces like they're framed up, they look nice, they're on display, and they're done well. So it makes it much more difficult to say no. But yeah, eventually I just ended up passing despite liking some of them. I did like the Probe Droid one. I know that was kind of more of like that, you know, sort of you're looking on voyeuristic approach, landscape approach, but and a few others. I actually stopped by Lindsay's booth, and I through images I wasn't really like I it was one of those kind of like I could take it or leave it. But once I saw the work in person, it was much different. It had a little bit more of an impact on me, and I liked the colors and the overall execution of it. So it crossed my mind, but then I'm like, what am I doing? I'm not a big Ahsoka fan, So I had to think that through as well. But yeah, I mean, it's hard not to get caught up in the moment sometimes. But yeah, eventually it was just one of those things where I just passed across the board.
That might be a good segue into my next slide, even though I do want to highlight. So Echo Base North says, I make a rule that if I cannot display it, I just can't have it. It's hard. That used to be me, where I didn't even want to buy a portfolio for the longest time, and I didn't have one for the longest time because I was like, no, if I buy an art print, that means I'm going to display it, and so therefore I don't need a portfolio to store anything. And then I just caved and I got a portfolio. And so far so good. I don't think I've gone like way overboard. I tend to like I kind of weigh the pros and cons, and I think FOMO has a bit to do with that where if it's an art print that I know I love, but I'm not exactly sure where it's going, I'd rather just get it and then figure that out later. If it means swapping something out that I already have on the walls, knock on wood, I haven't done that yet. Because I try to be selective. But yeah, I wouldn't buy any print unless I knew specifically that it was going to just be displayed and then I knew exactly where it was going to go. The other thing about, and Jason, you mentioned this too a little bit, is the way I see art print collecting is almost like how I see laundry. Like
Hmm.
doing laundry is easy. Folding it and putting it away, 8 to 10 business days, easy. Like, so for me, it's easy to buy art prints, but when it comes to like taking them to get framed, getting them in, putting them on the walls, I have a bunch that are framed that are not on the walls. Just mapping it out, gridding it out, spacing them accurately. or evenly, that's a huge project. But I don't want to be that person who has a bunch of art and has a bunch of plans for art, and then I just never get on the walls because I don't have time. So
Yeah.
it's definitely like a work in progress. Like even the space behind me, in my mind, it's already occupied because I do have prints that I'm going to put up there. I'm waiting for an original to go back there, and so it's like, why bother putting the print up there until I have the original, and I'll do both at the same time. Anyway, it might as well be a psychosis collecting art prints sometimes, I swear. But I think we mentioned too that you're not a big Ahsoka person, but you're attempted to get an Ahsoka print. I am not a fan of Phantom Menace, but there's 2 prints I'll be showing tonight that are Phantom Menace prints that I still managed to pick up. So this is the one that wasn't at Celebration, but I'm just kind of mentally considering it a Celebration pickup. I
Oh, I
hadn't,
like that.
yeah, I hadn't shown this because everyone and their mother wanted it, and it's like a YouTube effect. Not that I think we don't have that big of a following here compared to larger channels, but it's one of those, like, the second you talk about it on YouTube, everyone else wants it, and so therefore it's so the list of people who wanted this was probably twice as long as the amount of prints that they actually had made of this. So this is the variant of it. I should have put an inset of the regular, but the regular is kind of like a blue and pink, but still that very like not grayscale, but like very toned down, with hints of blue and pink. This is obviously the one I went for. This is the variant. They did 40 of each, so the regular and the variant. This was a private commission, and the gold is actually metallic. So I'm pretty sure it's metallic ink, but they described it as metallic gloss varnish over the bits that are gold. And Zero is they did a Kill Bill that was almost similar, where it was black and white with I think it was yellow as opposed to gold, and it did look fantastic. I'm just not a Kill Bill person. So Zero was really on my radar just because it's private commission. I'm not going to pretend that I've been a fan for years when I haven't.
Stacey, can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Just only because I'm viewing from my phone. Is that gold? Is that foil?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay, so that really stands out with the black and white. That's a sweet piece.
And what's hilarious is when these images came out, because I was not on the run, I don't know how long it took between the private commission and when the actual prints were produced, but it was very well received as soon as the images came out. And like I said, it didn't feel like a bidding war, but basically what happened was there's only 40. And like I said, there's a laundry list, probably longer than 40, of people like me who were looking for it after it had already been sold and completely sold out. So then it was a waiting game of, okay, we're waiting for someone to sell theirs and what price that's going to be to kind of like set the standard, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. So when you have something that's so exclusive, it's like, okay, we're waiting for the shoe to drop and for someone to sell one. So then we know what like the quote unquote fair market value is, if that makes sense. But it's funny, when I saw this the first time last year, pretty sure it was last year, I thought, well, heck, I don't like Phantom Menace, so this would probably be the only print I get. And then I'm going to show you another Phantom Menace print that I definitely got during Celebration. But yeah, I'll be thrilled to get this, and I'm very excited. And hello, Cash Gemini. Thanks for stopping by. But yeah, is this something that you would ever consider if you got the option?
Yeah, that I really really like. I like this a lot. This is an interesting image. I think, we see a lot of these foil prints,
Mhm.
and you know me, I feel like a lot of them are gimmicky, but I feel like this, like with this having the foil, this is how foil should be executed. You have the black and white, or the monochromatic tone, and that gold just pops. And it's done so in a really well way. Like it's more of an embellishment and accentuates the print rather than making it like gimmicky.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is fantastic. And it's great too. I'm glad that this is so limited, and it's not like, oh, there's a 300 of silver and a 400 of gold and 500 of red foil and blue foil. So yeah, this is something that's right up my alley. I would eat this up all day. Yeah.
And I love how the like those almost like reeds at the bottom kind of like break up all of that the
Yeah.
gray essentially. Because I think your eyes immediately drawn to the what I can only assume is the title at the top. But then you see like Jar Jar and all those the details Gunray because of those reeds coming out through the bottom. And I have a gut feeling that we'll see more from this artist, but the chance of so I will say this because I don't think I talk about private commissions very often, but for the most part, I tend to find out about private commissions when they're long closed. Basically, it's they're not typically quick turnarounds, private commissions. So when something like this, the art gets revealed to the public, it's like, oh crap! Like there's been people who've been on that list of a run of 40 for maybe a year. I'm not saying that that's the case with this commission, but I've also heard horror stories about private commissions that take years. That hasn't been my experience. I don't have a lot of experience with private commissions, but unfortunately, I think that's where, like we talk about the evolution of collecting. I think that um, my collecting is starting to go venture more into private commissions the
Yeah.
more I learn and everything else, and also original art and commissions that way. I don't know how much Star Wars that's going to be with original art, just because unfortunately the artists I love tend to already work with Disney, and that's something that, in case you weren't aware, if something like this, like a private commission, Disney wasn't involved, so
Yeah.
the run's going to be even lower. And I do have some prints that weren't, I wouldn't describe them as private commissions, but they were smaller runs specifically because they weren't Warner
Yeah.
Brothers, Disney weren't involved.
Weren't
Uh,
involved. Yeah.
and so
I,
there's, go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, I was gonna say I think the private commission thing is interesting. You brought up some good points where like, sometimes when you learn about them, they've been long and gone, and there's been a few that have crossed my path and I'm like, oh, it's a great piece. Like, oh, it's a private commission. Like, how do I get one? Oh, that was X amount of years ago, and well, you're just getting it now. Yeah, but there was this, that, and the other, and that's happened more than once. And, I mean, a piece like this is a perfect example where I may have only been familiar with it through you sharing it with me prior, but not knowing the details. So what I'm finding interesting and I'm seeing more often, there was also a Seinfeld one, and this is a little off topic, but just to bring up, I was invited to the group to purchase it, and I had noticed that like the back and forth and the communication, like it had been in the works for like 2 years, possibly longer. And maybe a little less, but it was definitely a substantial amount of time because it was, a private commission, exclusive, et cetera, to a group. What normally happens, and at least in my 23 years of collecting art, is someone commissions an artist, you do a private commission, and it's a one-off. It's a commission for you. So like they would make this image for you, and then if the image is popular enough where they like it or they think they executed it well, they say, hey, they'll come to you and say, hey, are you okay with the fact that I turn this into a print run or an edition run? Now I've had that happen many a times out of the many pieces that I've commissioned. The one with Dave Kinsey specifically, where I remember him saying like, I really like this piece. It wasn't my intent to make it a print edition, but are you okay with that? So I think what's interesting now is now you're talking about artists like you said who have contracts with Warner Brothers, Disney, Lucasfilm, etc., and it makes things a little bit more tricky to navigate because everybody's going to get their cut, and that's totally understandable. So it's like, okay, do I jeopardize my sort of do I bite the hand that feeds me, but also take on these extreme limitations? Will I still be able to deliver and do things to the fans and do things to myself that are fun, without like it's just an interesting thing because I like the idea of artists taking on commissions that are going to be more than just availability for one person that multiple people can get in on, but also it benefits both parties. But yeah, when you're talking about an IP, it's tricky. But I've been learning a lot more about these lately, and I think it's a really interesting topic and something that's pretty neat. But yeah, you're right. It's kind of hard to follow and be on top of consistently because there's a few of them out there, and it depends on what you follow and who's doing them.
And so I'm going to pull up Aaron's question here. So where was this originally posted or for sale? You mentioned private commission. So was this only offered to Zero's contact/customer list? So if Jason hinted on it a little bit. So I think that the way I've seen private commissions handled goes one of two ways. Either it's, as Jason said, someone commissions an original piece and it's either typically, I don't know if people tend to start this way or if it's like, hey, I'm going to commission the original art. And then the person who's commissioning the art says, okay, I want the original art. And then let's do a print run. And I almost question if the print run helps offset some of the costs of the original art for the person who's commissioning it in the first place. Does that make sense? But I do.
Normally that's to the artist. Like the few pieces that I've had commissioned where the artist has come to me and said, "Hey, do you mind if I turn this into a print edition?" There's no financial benefit to me or no offset to me. But then again, I mean, there's various ways that people can work those things out. Usually the artist will just ask permission to say, "Hey, because it's a one of a kind piece you've commissioned, technically you've paid for that one-off piece." But it is where it's beneficial to the owner is provenance, the fact that you own the original and it's now an edition piece. So there are, mutual benefits there, but I've yet personally to experience where it's helped me offset the cost, but I wouldn't I wouldn't be surprised if now with the way these are changing and working, if that's a possibility or even an actual thing. And that's why I find it pretty intriguing and pretty interesting because I like the idea of that.
And I will say, so the other thing that makes me incredibly reluctant to talk about private commissions on here is it's not my expertise. I am ignorant to it. I'm still learning. So I don't like getting up here like a TED talk and explaining something that I don't fully understand myself. But it's been my experience and the little experience I've had with private commissions, because I think I'm on like four or five different private commission projects right now, is that it's almost, if Aaron or anyone else listening is curious, it's almost treated the same way that like custom statues are treated, if you're familiar. So it tends to be private Facebook groups. A lot of times they'll create Facebook groups specifically to run the commission. So they'll say, hey, here's the artist, here's the IP, who's interested, this is the art fee, this is how much we're going to do 40 of them. It's going to be a regular and a variant or just one edition. Who's in? Here's the private group. If you join this private group, that's your commitment to purchase the print. And that's been my experience so far. And as far as like how long some of these can take, I got on one for the Kenobi series before the Kenobi series started. It's not printed yet. So the art is done, but the print itself is not done. So if that gives you an idea, and like I said, and another reason why I'm reluctant is because just like custom statue makers, it's like I don't want to be vouching for any of these commissioners, if that makes sense.
For sure.
There's a Facebook group specific. There's a few different, well, I don't want to say a few different Facebook groups, but basically there are avenues you can take, like anything, to see reviews on certain commissions where it's like, hey, here's a commission where the people got their art print, but it took several years. Or there's an issue with the print, like the paper or the ink, or like there's some kind of, or like, hey, there's a lack of communication. It took a while and no one gave updates, like that sort of thing. I have no horror stories with that, but I could also tell you those stories are also the same kind of ones you'd hear for like original art. Like I commissioned original art from someone, I think almost 2 years ago, and I still haven't gotten it. That being said, I'm not impatient. I understand life stuff happens, and that so long as the person's updating me and existing online and hasn't like disappeared, I have no concerns or qualms with that. It just sometimes I don't want to. How do I say this? Don't rush the process. I think it's like anything. I don't think art should be rushed at all. So I'm not going to be concerned. But yeah, I think that whether it's an original art piece, because again, I've heard horror stories with that, with artists that are either don't communicate, or don't follow through on commissions, ended up refunding them. No artist that I know, but just honestly, I've heard it more with the Batman stuff than Star Wars. And then the other thing, the reason why I am reluctant to talk about private commissions that much, and I only mention this one because I know I'm not the only one on YouTube who's talked about it, is, and I'm not throwing Disney under the bus specifically, but there are artists that either once you work with Disney, they won't touch a Disney property when it's a private commission or even original art, because they don't want to be on the outs with the mouse, which makes sense. You don't want to bite the hand that
Correct.
feeds. Or the opposite. It's, there could be an artist who's fantastic and want to eventually work for Disney and don't want to do anything like unauthorized fan art and sell
Upset
that
them
art
ahead of time. Yeah.
and potentially ruin a business relationship in the future. But I feel like I'm on a tangent now. And also, oh, interesting. Okay, Aaron mentions wasn't familiar with the artist, or yeah. So like this one, I know the commission was closed for a really long time for the Zero print, and hence a lot of people like me were looking for it. And Aaron says he's worked with Vance Kelly on some commission works. Vance Kelly, I almost featured the last print that Vance Kelly did, the Vader, but I had a feeling I was going to talk about one print in particular a little long tonight, so I didn't throw it in there. But and then Dylan says favorite shows on the channel, learned a lot about the art world. Well, thank you so much. I want to do this show more often, but probably why I'm sympathetic to artists who have a hard time finishing commissions on time. Life stuff gets in the way. But I do hope that we can get back on track and do these a little more regularly, especially because Mando's over, so I'm not staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning watching that with Matt. And then next up, I actually forget what I have next up, but okay, so these ones released like almost a month ago because mine have just shipped. So Bottleneck is starting to ship these. These were by Chris Valentine, who I'm obviously a huge fan of. And I think this was the first Andor prints, licensed Andor prints that were released. The second one was one of the Celebration exclusives by Sam Gilby, I want to say, which that one was tempting. But because I had gotten this set, I decided to pass. So this is a Giclée. It's 18 by 24, and which is good size. Also small edition size for these ones, even though they were released through Bottleneck and they were licensed. So each of these were limited to 40.
Wow. Okay. Nice.
Yeah, and I do. How do you feel about the negative space on the bottom?
Normally I'm against it, but with this looks like it was originally executed in watercolor. I mean, I could be wrong again. I'm watching from my phone. It looks like a watercolor technique. Do you agree, or is it more of an acrylic and maybe a mixed media of like oil and acrylic? The way it has that sort of like sort of a aggressive approach to the backgrounds where it works into having the negative space. Normally negative spaces turn me off. It, like you made a good point on the print with the large white border.
Right.
That makes things really difficult and complicated to frame accurately. And I get why it's done, but it makes it a challenge and can sometimes end up being quite the eyesore. But this, I think, works. With the top being, congested the way it is, it makes a good balance. So I do like this. I like this a real lot, actually.
Chris Valentine's going to give me a bunch of shit, I have a feeling, if I say this the wrong way, but I think I think he primarily works in acrylic, but I'm
Okay.
totally guessing based on the style of his art. So if I'm wrong, sorry, Chris, you can give me hell next time we talk. But yeah, I really liked the negative space with this. I love the texture on the bottom. I don't know if I'd like it as much if it was completely finished, if I'm honest. I think I like the energy that it gives the piece to, and that small title I think is brilliant. I think if it was any larger, it would get lost. But I think that this is an excellent likeness. I don't want to forget this comment by Aaron though. So one of those Zero variants is listed on eBay for 1,190. I did not pay that in case my mother is watching.
Yeah,
I don't.
I could see it going for that much though. It's a very unique piece and very well done. Yeah.
It's one of those things like Aaron or anyone else who's interested in that piece and getting sticker shock because of that price. It's like you could pay a lot for it now, or you can wait a few years. And I've definitely had pieces. I had that Mark Englert that I wouldn't shut up about. That I It was years before I bought it because I refused to pay what it was going for on eBay, and that thing still goes for like $700 and $800 on eBay. And I was like, "There's no way." And I think I bought it during COVID for like not even half. Yeah, it was definitely. I think I spent like $200 on it from Australia. So it's like if you want to play the long game, feel free to play the long game. This one, I just didn't want to miss out. So, but I didn't pay that in case my mom's watching. I swear. But anyway,
It's Chris Valentine piece, like you said. I agree 1,000%. I like the Andor is if it was much bigger, it would be an eyesore. It would detract. It's got a good balance. Again, I'm not a big fan of negative space, but this is really this is balanced out really well. And I do how I even like that the Andor is thrown in there, but it's done so in the right way where it doesn't detract or compete with the image.
yeah. And next up, in the same vein, so this was the Andor, obviously, or the Cassian. We had Mon Mothma. Now, I will say I like everything I just talked about with the Andor. As far as the negative space, I love the texture. I love the dimension that this one has. I will say of the three in this set, I think this one, the likeness wasn't. You can definitely tell who it is, and that's her. But I
Yeah,
think that
it's just not as spot on. Yeah.
she's softer on camera. But to be fair, like that's not ever always going to be translated into art, if that makes sense.
And
Um,
stylistically, I can see. I mean, this has a different. Yeah, stylistically, it works with this. Even though, like you said, out of the likenesses, this is probably the least.
mhm.
It still works though.
But I think everything else, like the textures and everything, I thought this was probably. Um, I think the Cassian's my favorite, but this, I mean, all of them are great. I'm gonna struggle as to which one I end up displaying because I don't think I'll be able to display all three on the same wall. So I think I'll end up figuring out a way that I could swap them out. So I've been doing research into that as far as what kind of frames or displays I could use with that. Um, but yeah, so same like you could buy the set. They were limited to 40. And also I don't want to forget, so the release on these were weird because like I knew what week they were going up, and then I hadn't heard anything, I hadn't seen anything, and then Bottleneck said that they were releasing, I think it was Pablo Oliveira's Book of Boba Fett print. Maybe. Oh, it's all ringing together. Um, I think that they said there it was another Star Wars piece. I think it was Pablo Oliveira's Book of Boba Fett. They said that they were releasing that, and then at what felt like the 11th hour, they were like, "Oh, and we're also releasing this Andor set." So it was kind of very late. Like I don't think a lot of people got a lot of notice on these,
I feel
but
like I vaguely remember that. Okay.
yeah, I don't like. I'm trying to figure out what hour it was that it was like, oh crap, they're on the blog. Like I think there are some wires crossed with this release, if that makes sense. But that being said, Chris Valentine did get artist proofs of the Rogue One poster he did and offered remarks. The negative space on this, I don't want to put words in Chris Valentine's mouth, but I think the negative space on this, if there's one that you wanted to get remarked, I think this one would be a fantastic option. He might hate me if you guys all flood his inbox and ask him that, but
Huh.
if you do want this and you missed out, um, you could probably hold out for artist proofs. I will say he's in South Africa, so the shipping's not going to be. Unfortunately, you're gonna pay a lot in shipping, but it'll probably still be less than aftermarket for the set. Um, and then next up, oh, Dylan says he's climbing up for me to be alongside Tom Whalen and Matt Ferguson. Yeah, I told Chris Valentine I think it was yesterday, that he's such a humble guy, and I'm like, one day you're not going to respond to my messages because you're going to be too big of a deal. Um, and we were just talking about artists we love and how we freak out when they like a picture we post online or something like that. So, really humble guy. He's also into the same like he's into Hot Toys. He has a really great little collection of Hot Toys on his desk. And also, what I like is he collects art from other artists. I've seen it. I think he's posted photos of his office, and he has other. That's something I'd love to see if there's artists and like open up their portfolios or their flat files and see what other art they collect themselves. Anyway, I'm just being a nerd for a second, but next up is Luthen.
Yeah, that's a
I
great
really
one.
love so the other character I'll say that people were excited to see hopefully him do in the future, and I hope they do this, even though again I don't know if we're gonna see him again, is Kino Loy.
Okay, yep.
So I hope that would be an excellent portrait series. And again, I'm hoping I could swap them out or something like that just to maximize my wall space. But yeah, same excellent textures. Also, I'm pretty sure this is from that scene with his excellent monologue. At least that's what like I hear that monologue the second I look at this. I think it's him on the catwalk in that scene, when he's talking to that spy about what he sacrificed, and
Yeah,
that's
and that was a hell of a delivery, that line.
that scene gets me every time. I know it was one of Matt's favorites too. But yeah, looking at these just makes me want to watch the series all over again. So Chris killed this. I think that he did an excellent job, and I'm not done talking about his art tonight. So let's see I forget what's up next. Honestly, you can tell my memory is shot sometimes. Okay,
What a great triptych though. Like what a good balance and a great set to display, and
mhm.
going at the 18 by 24 makes it more makes it more reasonable to do so.
Yeah. So I guess we're not done gushing about Chris Valentine. So this is right when I had made the decision to get the Zero Phantom Menace, because I was like, I really don't like Phantom Menace. What are the odds I'm going to end up getting another Phantom Menace poster? And then Chris did this. So my wallet was really upset because, of course, I had to get both. This is a Giclée, 24 by 36, of course. So it's on the larger side, but it has so much detail to it. I can't imagine it being any smaller. And this was limited to 200. So this one did release. Oh, what day was it?
This is recent, right?
Yeah, I think it was the Friday of Celebration, and I was very nervous about that because time zones and all that sort of thing. I was hoping this was going to be a larger edition size. I don't know how quickly it sold out because I wasn't really like paying close attention. I was at a pub when I ordered this, but I think that he managed to pack a lot into this and a lot of detail into this without it looking crazy busy. And I think he does that really well with like the separation of the colors. And these are not colors I'd ever think would be incorporated into a Phantom Menace print, if that makes sense. I think too, a lot of the teaser posters we saw were not on the, very colorful side.
Yeah.
But I I never thought I would want a Phantom Menace poster as badly as this one. I think he did a
Yeah,
great.
this is a great image. And you're right. If you go back to the fail and the stylistic approach to the teaser images, it's nothing like that. It has more of a I don't know. I like the balance of different hues. You have a lot of subtle ones that merge into each other very well. The purples and reds, the greens, the blues. And it is busy. And you made a good point with the size, right? So there's a lot of naysay against everything being 24 by 36, but then
Mm,
sometimes it has to be. And this is definitely one of those images that makes perfect sense where it needs to be 24 by 36. Otherwise, it would have been way too busy and almost too congested to look at.
right. And I probably should have tried to find detail shots of this. The PowerPoint doesn't do it justice, but I will say, if it's anything like the Rogue One he did, which the shapes seem very similar to me, I think I'm seeing like a pattern emerging with his style. the Rogue One, there were some characters on that print that were like their faces were the size of a thumbnail. So this is detailed. But I think, and I told him when I saw this the first time, like, I don't know how he manages to do this without it seeming so busy. But I think
Yeah.
it is like the kind of like, I don't want to be wrong, but like to me, painterly style and the way he uses color to kind of block things out and organize it. It almost seems like I don't want to say organized chaos, but I love this. I really hope I'm going to be able to fit it in my living room. I'll be measuring that out soon to see if that works. But and Brandon says he missed out. Like I said, if you do want to hold out for an artist proof from Chris Valentine, I'm sure he'll get them eventually. If you're willing to just get the swing the shipping, I will say I don't know if he's gonna watch the show, but I forget how to say his first name. Is it Dill David, who we met
Oh,
in
okay. Yeah.
pub?
Yep.
Yeah. So we had actually talked because he got his Rogue One print, and then he was interested in getting a remark from Chris where one of them was amazing, where he managed to fit Krennic somewhere within the Death Troopers on the Rogue One print.
Nice.
It looked like it was meant to be there the whole time, and I told him because he already had the art print he had purchased, and he said just shipping his art print from is it England or is it in Cardiff? Anyway,
Yeah.
UK, shipping it from the UK to South Africa to get Chris Valentine to do the remark and then ship it back was going to be exuberant. And I said, if I were you, I'd sell the Rogue One in the UK and then just buy an artist proof from Chris Valentine and have him add the remark to it. So that way you're only paying for the shipping the one way.
Good call. Yeah. Perfect.
So I don't know. It would have to make sense financially, but I think it's special enough that it would be worth it. That's another thing. I don't have any art that's remarked, so that's another thing on my wish list besides commissions and originals. Did you pick this one up, Jason?
I didn't know. I do like this, but again, it's a matter of what's this going to compete against? Is it going to make it onto the wall? I mean, that's really what it boils down to. And I feel like sometimes it comes across as though like I'm not necessarily into the prints, or I'm not necessarily a fan of them. I mean, but we have the private chat where me, you, and Matt are talking prints, comics, vinyl. I'm like, oh yeah, this is but it's tough, right? Because I mean, even with you, I feel like, and I've said this since day one, since you've come into the group, I always felt like you were pretty well disciplined with what you collect versus what you like. Because there's plenty of things that I know catch your attention through conversation, but you're not out throwing your dollar at everything that lights your eyes up, and that's a good thing.
There's a Hellboy bust sitting next to me that I never planned on owning. But go ahead about me being disciplined.
Well, for the most part, I feel like at least out of the group of us, you tend to do the best with not being like, oh, let me grab this just for the sake of grabbing it. But with that being said, I used to be like that with art, and then I mean, it's been a while, but now 4 or 5 portfolios, and the problem was is I always had the intent of, oh, I'll rotate things, I'll frame some things up, I'll do this and I'll do that, and you know what? You just keep buying more stuff, and then it becomes impossible to do that. And I have a problem where, like, if I have hot toys or if I have statues, eventually I'll get around to selling them. Like I'm not a huge seller of my collectibles, but I will sell them. When I buy prints, I don't sell them ever. I don't know why. It's a weird thing where I have a hard time. Even if it's like a $50 print and it doesn't really have the value, I'm much more apprehensive of letting a print go. I've given a few away during like, the holiday, swaps and stuff like that. But otherwise, yeah. So I'm really careful with what I purchase, and it's tough because a piece like this, it'll go up and I'll be like, yeah, I'm okay. And then I miss it. I'm like, ah, suck. Shit, I wish I didn't miss that. And, I kind of have like the regrets, so it's a tough one. I mean, what was the drop yesterday or today? The Hoth one that had the foil, because I have the original one with the stormtroopers in the hallway. And I think you were responding to somebody saying that I think the foil is deliberately done in place of the art because it's like the lasers, the shooting of the guns where the foil was, and that's why I went for that one. So it would have been a nice pair to match them with, and I was like, oh, that would be great. Have a New Hope, have ESP, then eventually a Jedi one, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna pass. And then the second I passed on it, I'm like, damn, why did I pass on that? So I have this like love hate relationship with Prince. I know you just asked me whether or not I got it, but just this, my rant is leading somewhere. So yeah, I was mad that I missed it, but it was one of those things where like I'm like I can't get this because if I do, right, it's like I'm gonna want to put it up and I'm gonna want to hang it, and but how do I do that? So it's just this cycle of the snake eating its tail, if you will.
Yeah. So I skipped because I wasn't sure which one I featured next, but I am going to show the one that you're talking about, the like companion piece to Boarding Party. I think it's called Uninvited Guests. But Blitz says he met Malcolm Tween. Yeah, he's a really nice guy. And he ended up having a copy of the Northridge, the one with the Imperial shuttle and the TIE fighters. I'm telling you, all you have to do is ask sometimes with those artist proofs. I actually accidentally ended up with 2 of those prints last year in Anaheim because I knew Chris wanted one, and the reception in the convention center was so bad that I bought one for Chris, and then he ran into me and was like, oh my gosh, Malcolm Tween, I went to his booth, he had an artist proof of that print I wanted. And I was like, yeah, I got one for you. It's in my tube. So, yeah, it was so really nice guy. And it never hurts to ask artists if you're looking for something and you don't want to venture. Like, please do some. I've said this before. I feel like a broken record. This is going to be the night of rants. I feel. Do your research. Either reach out to the artist, see if they have artist proofs, like Malcolm Tween having some from 3 years ago, or look into galleries. If it was something where it was a co-release between Vice Press and Sideshow, or Acme and Bottleneck, like see if it's sold out through Bottleneck, check to see if Acme still has it. Because sometimes you'll have galleries that are like international distributors. So if you buy it through another gallery, you might just end up paying a little bit more than shipping because it'll be international, but at least it might be less than eBay prices. But next up I've got, so this released at the same day. I think it was Friday or Thursday. I don't remember, but Gabs. I'm a sucker for Gabs. I didn't get this one. I got the other one I'm going to show you in a second. So, but I thought this one was fantastic. I love the gray.
Yeah.
So obviously Kylo Ren, and his portraits tend to be on the small side, 13 by 19. So with that, I end up matting those and putting them in an 18 by 24 frame. And I think they look fantastic.
What works with the size too, CC, is that sort of like Mike Mitchell, he's following a formula where every time he releases a new character, the size is consistent and the style is consistent. So I think whether you get a bunch or just a couple, they work together. So it's good because it allows you to pass on specific ones. But if you're kind of hey, I like everyone he releases, I think they all display well together. They display great together, actually.
Mm-hmm. And so this one was limited to 100. Also reminds me, I mentioned his Jack Nicholson Joker print when I did a video for Chris the Batman statue collector. And I had a few people messaging me asking me if they could find one, how could they find one? And I think that one, the Jack Nicholson one that he did, was it last year? I think the one I have was like one of 15. So at least I appreciate that these Star Wars ones are obviously, the licensed ones have higher edition sizes. I thought this one was great. And of course the variant, I know, I wish Matt was here because he would, talk about how he hates this variant. It's just the yellow tone. I will say, and I've said this before, I sound like a broken record, I do think that this variant, the style of variant, works if you plan on displaying a bunch of them all at once, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Gabs himself, I think on Instagram has, and I think I've shown him on the show before, put all of the regulars together and all the variants together just to see like his progress and what he's done. And I will say they both look amazing. I'd probably go with the regulars because like the Mace Windu was purple. This one's obviously, the regular is very gray. They each have like a very strong, like color blocking is not the right word, but it definitely seems like he's doing them on a specifically colored paper as opposed to like a white background that's colorized. But so this was the variant. It was limited to 100, and they've done that before, where the variant is the same edition size as the regular, which is interesting. It's typically that the variant is less available, but so that one dropped the same day as the Chris Valentine, and then I got this one. I thought I could try to incorporate it in my Rogue One display. I'll see if that works.
That's a great color for this image.
Oh, I love it's the same like that sepia tone.
That's fail for Jim, yeah.
I didn't put it next to the Lando skiff guard or the Lando portrait he did, but I think it was the same kind of tone. I don't think you'd be wrong for putting those together either. I think they would look really good together. But again, same size, 13 by 19, edition size of 100. And then we've got I'll keep it on the screen for a second. I will say, I've been a fan of Gab's for a long time. It's actually his portraits, I think, that I like the most. I think if you're, I don't want to say wheelhouse, but when I think of Gabs, I think the portraits. He nails these portraits, and he's done a lot of different IPs. And the portraits, they all have they almost have like a intimate quality to them for some reason. Yeah, just I think he does an excellent job with the likenesses, and there's something like delicate to these where because they're not fully finished, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm very happy to get this in. I just hope it'll fit on the wall I plan on putting it on. So here's the variant. So again, that like yellow tone, kind of a little more muted. If you have a bunch and you want them to look a little more consistent, I could see these looking good together. But I was a sucker. I got the color version. And then next up, I don't remember what's next up. Let's see. Okay. So this is the one that released, today's Wednesday, yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Jack Gregory. It's his second, I think, Star Wars release ever, second bottleneck release ever, I'm pretty sure. His first one was that boarding party. This is Uninvited Guest. It's a screen print. It's 24 by 36, and this was limited to 425. I think the boarding party one was a high edition size as well, probably because they figured it was popular. The first one was very well received, very comic booky. I had a lot of people commenting and saying that they really liked that one. I'm a sucker for ESB. I didn't get this just because I like it. I don't think it fits with everything else I have, essentially. And you mentioned the foil. I don't want to rush this, but the foil, I had a few people ask me about it as far as, and if you want a really long TED Talk, go ahead and watch the first Hoth Off the Press we ever did. But so with the foil on this, I'm pretty sure that the foil component to it is actually the blaster fire, like you're saying, where that looked mirrored with like kind of that pink reddish glow around the edges, as opposed to, I almost want to say like the Pablo Oliveira treatment, where it's like the entire paper is a metallic foil.
Yeah, I like this. I like the way they've executed this better with the foil. It makes more sense. It's like the zero print. The zero print makes more sense having those elements be in foil because it helps separate the image.
Yeah. And this one was limited to 225 for the variant. Pretty sure they sold out very quickly. They also did a pre-sale link. So if you had bought the first one, I think it was Monday, they sent out emails to those customers who had bought the first one to see if they would be interested in buying the second. And I love that Bottleneck does that. I think they give it's fair to the people who are loyal followers of the artist, and they've done that several times for a few of the releases that I've grabbed. But I was going to say something else about this foil. I can't remember what it was. Oh no, I'm sorry. The other variant they did, I didn't include a slide because I couldn't get the GIF to work for some reason, was a lenticular. I'm not a big fan of lenticulars, but I think I know two people who did go for the lenticulars because they have light boxes and they're easier to swap in and out. And I think if I tend to find most lenticulars to be gimmicky, I do think this style, that kind of like, to me, comic book style, lends itself more to a lenticular than most.
Yeah, it does make it a little bit easier.
And I didn't mention, I forgot, the Phantom Menace, Chris Valentine's Phantom Menace, there was no like traditional variant in a sense where there's a big change to the art. The only quote unquote variant they did was a version that was on acrylic, like 3mm acrylic. So there's only like one version of that art. I have heard from people that the acrylic prints display really, really well. That's not something I want to get into. I'm good with the expensive paper for now. And then next up, okay, probably the most important thing or whatever, like excited thing that I want to talk about. I even had Matt change up the thumbnail for tonight's video in case you hadn't noticed. So that'll probably stick around for a while. So this is, I'm calling a blast from the past. These are not available right now. I don't mean to cause confusion because I've done that before, but I'm just showing these to give an idea of what we're expecting with Matt Ferguson's newest print. So if you weren't collecting then or not familiar, I'm sure you've seen this art, but in 2020, he did this Empire Strikes Back poster for the 40th anniversary. When it released, the regulars, so the ones at the top, those kind of like turquoise kind of color, aqua color. I think Tony Ducker calls it green. Those were the regulars. So they had one with the English title and then one with the Japanese title treatment. I have the Japanese. Those were both timed. So they were available for a certain period of time. In case you're not familiar with time releases, I think it was like maybe 42 hours, 36 hours, 72 hours. I don't remember what it was. But they basically print as many as they sell. And I'm still very grateful they did that because they were big edition sizes and they're still incredibly popular even 3 years later. Then they did the variants below, the kind of like, I call it black and white with pops of color. They did one with the English, one with the Japanese. If I remember correctly, even those, because even though they were the limited ones, I think they were still runs of like 450. So even the variants were, that's pretty high. Again, because these were popular, so it was great. They also did a lenticular version. If I remember correctly, the lenticular was released a few months after these were released. So I say all of this because I think his newest one, which we're going to see in a second for Return of the Jedi, they're going to mirror the same kind of release they did in 2020 as far as what's going to be available, with only one exception. An exception, for whatever reason, I thought was a done deal, but it sounds like it may or may not happen. So I apologize because I think I did imply in the Facebook group at least that the one variant I thought they were doing was a go. But this is the actual art. So we were fortunate enough. I say I ditched Jason the second I saw a better seat up front towards in the panel. We went to the 4th anniversary Return of the Jedi panel. Steve was there. We ran into Christian. Chris was there. Marvin, Jason, John Simmons, and I was hoping the whole time that I was sitting there that they were gonna show this print at the end, this poster, and they did, and I screamed like I was at a boy band concert. So maybe it's for the best that I didn't end up sitting next to you, Jay. But so this is going to be the regular version of the poster. It's releasing to the public on May the 4th. The only difference between this poster and the one that'll be releasing through Bottleneck on May the 4th is it will not have the credit block, which you could barely see. It's that small print towards the bottom in white. And it will also not say returns to theaters April 28th. That's a promotion for the fact that they are bringing the movie back to cinemas starting on the 28th for a week, I think up until May the 4th. So I'm also going to really look forward to seeing it in theaters for the first time ever. It's probably going to be the specialized edition, but I'll take it. This is going to be a screen print. It's going to be 24 by 36. Like I said, this is the regular, and I do have some detail shots. But Jason, what were your first impressions with this?
Man, I loved it. I immediately, yeah, second I saw this, I was just like, that is it. That is the bee's knees for sure. Um, I mean, I'm a Jedi guy. It's the first movie I saw coming up, so nostalgic wise, it's my thing. But man, did he talk about nailing the elements? Sometimes the Jedi posters have a tendency to get a little too busy and they want to stick everybody and their uncle. And I get it, right? You have all these elements from like Jabba to Skiff to, Endor. There's so much going on and so many amazing scenes. And I get that you want to get everybody crammed in there. But he took the pinnacle of the story, the point of the story, right? The arc of the story and the characters, and they're right there and it explains it all, delivers it. But then just right off to the side, you get those little elements. You see the walkers, you see the a little bit of Endor, you get the Death Star, and but it's not punching you in the face. And that I just the second this popped up on the screen, I'm like, that is the poster to have. Like that is the art image if there ever was to explain Return of the Jedi. I'm in love with this. This is like on a scale of 1 to 10, for me, this is a 15.
Yeah, I agree, and I was having a really hard time articulating how I felt in that panel seeing this at the end, because for me it was very like Matt Ferguson started my art print collecting, and I still joke to this day like it was a Star Trek print, which I still have it. I'm not getting rid of it anytime soon, but in 2016, like that art print, like his work is what sent me down the rabbit hole of collecting screen prints, and I haven't looked back. So to be at Celebration surrounded by friends in London and see this, it was like my freaking Super Bowl. Like I couldn't have asked for like a better time, better company. So my memories of Celebration, thankfully, will always also be tied into this poster by my favorite artist. Um, and I will be honest, like I was not expecting Vader to be kind of like the big bad looming in the background. I expected Palpatine when I envisioned, and I was hoping that, of course, he would be doing a Return of the Jedi poster for the anniversary, just like Empire Strikes Back. But I think that this makes more sense. It highlights the fact that the most important aspects of the story was the relationship between Vader and Luke and Vader's redemption.
Yes, and that's what kills it, Cece. Like that's the best part is you have the heroine and the villain, but you have them sort of juxtaposed together. You're right. It would have been expected to have Emperor, seeing as how ESB had that large silhouette of Vader, but
Yeah,
even that was a perfect fit. Like
yeah.
this is just spot on. This is everything, you know, a movie style poster should be aspire to be.
And Luke in that outfit where like at the end you see like he's wearing this kind of black darkish evil looking, and then like it opens up and you see like the light gray, and like that's what you see here. That's the likeness. I'll show you a slide in a second showing some detail shots, because I think it would be remiss if we didn't look at this a little bit closer. But to answer Doug Collector's question, everything, yes. So the white you see, the return to theaters April 28th, and then the small font, which is the credits that features the actors, that won't be on there. There's some I don't know the legalities, but there's weird issues with credit blocks. Like honestly, I think most of the time I see credit blocks, it's on private commissions as opposed to licensed ones. And it also was not on the Empire Strikes Back. And then Dylan has a question. Do you think his so I think it's pretty much
Okay.
yeah. So do you think his 50th anniversary New Hope will be in line with his 40th series, or do you think he'll do something new for a 50th? I'm trying to think. So he has done a New Hope poster, or print rather. I'm sorry, I keep using the word interchangeably. It just wasn't for an anniversary. I do like it. It's I don't own it. I've debated getting it, but because I do like the style and everything. That being said, I think it would be an incredible disservice if he didn't continue it and do a New Hope one. Um,
Yeah, you if there's a series that you need a triptych of, it's definitely the New Hope, the ESB, and there's. I mean, it has to be done.
And now,
Um,
I think the second. Sorry, I cut you off.
no, it's okay.
The second part of that question, I think, Dylan, is what you're trying to ask is, do I think it'll be in line with this? I think just from seeing what Matt's released with the progress sketches for, like, he'll do like quick, he calls them thumbnails, I think, sketches of like the composition and what he's envisioning. He was pretty cognizant of the fact that he didn't want this one to be so similar to Empire Strikes Back. So I don't know if that answers your question or makes things a little more complicated. So I do think that the likelihood of them doing a Star Wars one is going to be very high. What anniversary that'll be? It probably the 50th, because I think they just had the 45th last year. So it's a long waiting game, but I do think that it might be similar in style, but not a carbon copy of either of them. Just from like seeing his progress sketches and what he was willing to do and not willing to do, because he didn't want it to look so close to or a repeat of Empire Strikes Back. I don't know if that answered your question at all. And yes, the For Luck was the one that he did that was a New Hope or Star Wars, but again, it wasn't for the anniversary. So I think that and it was also landscape. So I think that the
Yeah,
chances.
I'm not crazy about that particular New Hope one where it's like Luke,
Yeah.
or like Luke saving. I'm not crazy about that one. Now, I don't know if you already mentioned it, and I'm sorry if you did, but do you know if there is going to be the quad release of this one?
So, and I have that slide coming up. I do, just to answer the question real quick, I do like the For Luck print, but I think if they do the Star Wars one, the New Hope, for the anniversary, it's going to be portrait like the other two. So I think I'm just going to hold out for that one as opposed to For Luck, but it's also me. I could decide tomorrow to get that the older one. But so you mentioned the quad. Let's go through some details, I think, and then I'll talk about that quad, because I'm a little devastated about the quad. Like the detail on Vader and the style of Vader in this one is definitely different than Empire Strikes Back, which I appreciate. I love the red, like the reflection.
Well, the thing about the quad that throws me off, like if this actually gets released, as an additional variant, I'm gonna want it because you're getting more of the image and more of the artist's intention. However, the thing that really throws me off with the Empire one is it's very easy to miss, but the Empire one is a quad. You see it as Vader's chamber in ESB, where what do they call it? The meditation chamber.
Yeah.
So in quad format, it's clearly the meditation chamber. But in poster form, you don't really see it that way. You're just seeing. I mean, yeah, if you look hard enough, you're like, oh, that's right. It's pointed out now. I can't unsee it, but it's not as clear and prominent that it is the meditation chamber that is, that he's standing within. So, and then you have Hoth kind of spilling out on the sides. You don't see a lot of that in the initial poster where it's been clipped. So if they do release it as a quad, I'm going to be really tempted to get it, but it's going to bother me having one and not the other.
Yeah. So I'm going through these detail shots a little quickly because I want to get to this quad, because I have like some
do your thing, yeah.
Good news and bad news. This Scout, like the details with the ATSTs, chicken walker, is that synonymous to chicken walker?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Sometimes I swear I think I'm not saying the right thing, but
well, usually the ESP, yeah, they call them chicken walker, but you can call it, yeah, they both look like chickens.
And the likeness on Luke and Mark Hamill's so difficult to get right, and I just think that he nailed it. I love this. And I also will say I'm a basic bitch, and I've always loved Empire more than Return of the Jedi. Is my favorite. And therefore I don't have a lot of Return of the Jedi in my collection, so I'm also just equally happy to have this and love it as much as I do, and the memories attached to it. But I also wanted to point out, so he did tease the black and white variant with the Japanese title. So just like that first slide I showed you, let me flip back to that. So these were the Empire releases.
Mm-hmm.
The ones on the bottom were the variants. So this is him basically confirming that they're going to be doing the same, that black and white with pops color, which sucks because I'm probably going to have to get both. Because I have the regular Empire Strikes Back with the Japanese title, and then I have the variant with the Japanese title as well. Yeah, it's just I'm gonna get both. At least both. So the other good news and bad news. This is the quad that we keep talking about. So for whatever reason, and I did at least one YouTube show. I was on Mike Costa and Shane and John, Collectors Enabled. It was an impulse thing on Sunday, and I think I said I thought that the quad was a done deal. It's not a done deal. So I think there's definitely a ton of interest in doing a quad. I think there's a lot
Well,
of
look how much more of the intended imagery you're getting.
You also get like Ewok Village essentially up in the trees on, I want to say, the right hand side. I don't think they're on the left hand side, but so naturally I thought of Matt, where it's like, hey, if you want more of those Ewoks you love, the quad's gonna be it. And also, I thought if I were to get one, the one I'd want to get was the quad. And I was wondering if it would bother me having the English title versus the Japanese, because I don't know if they do a quad and have more than one quad. Like if they would do something like this, and then also like the black and white and pops of color, and then also mess with the titles as far as the English and the Japanese. I think they would probably just do the one version of the quad. And a quad would be 30 by 40. So really large. It would be the largest art print in my collection, at least. Of course, a screen print. So the situation that happened with The Empire Strikes Back, because it was drafted, like the imagery is out there. It was not approved. I think it was an issue with like the placement of the titles, where I don't remember exactly what went wrong, if it was Disney didn't like where the title would have ended up or something like that, but the quad just for The Empire Strikes Back did not happen. I do think of the, as much as that Empire Strikes Back is still probably, in my opinion, I do like it more than The Return of the Jedi, just because I love the movie more. This one's like instantly more sentimental, though, just because of everything else. I think I'd want this in the quad also because the limited information I have or knowledge I have regarding quads is that they're kind of synonymous with British movie posters, in case someone could school me in the chat if I'm wrong on this. But the limited research I've done is that the quads were emerged after World War II because of the shortage in paper. So the only movie posters that the British government would allow, like the largest size, was this 30 by 40. I don't know what the predecessor was, if it was more of like a billboard size, or if it was twice the size of this or what have you, but that's why quads are pretty synonymous with like the British film culture, and for that reason I would really want the quad. Because of Celebration, because it's Matt Ferguson. It would be the only quad in my collection, I'd guarantee you. Because even if they went back into the Empire, I'd probably still want this for all the reasons you said. I think this shows a lot more different elements to it, because you just have a wider scope than with The Empire Strikes Back. The Empire Strikes Back, I think you're right. You do see more of that meditation chamber. But this, I think you have a lot more details going on to it. So the quad, like I said, there's a lot of interest in them doing this, but it would be, I've been a customer of Bottlenecks since 2016. I don't recall them ever doing a print this large. So it wouldn't surprise me if it's not like a solid no, it's more of like, hey, it would have to get approved. And also there would probably be some challenges in printing something this large when they're not used to it. Probably the same kind of headaches that maybe Daniel Danger did with those shadow boxes that we all drooled over last year. But it just a slight learning curve, if that makes sense. Also, I don't know if it's more likely that the quad would be something that would be released through Vice Press,
Now,
which is
do you
cool.
do you think they'll do a lenticular of this one? Because I have the lenticular of the ESB one. Do you think
They are
they'll?
they are doing a lenticular. It not the like I said, the quad is up in the air, but
Okay.
the regular they would. Do you recall? So, do you have the lenticular in Japanese or English?
Let me see. I don't have it framed, but I have it right here. Hold on. I was actually going through
Because I
my.
can't for the life of me remember if they did both. I thought they did, but they are doing a lenticular. I just didn't show that because obviously we haven't seen anything, any teases regarding what the lenticular would look like. But the lenticular,
Mine's the regular. I didn't. Yeah. Mine's the because it was an edition of 300, I think.
okay,
But yeah, mine's not the Japanese. It's the regular.
okay. So this would probably be what the lenticular would look like, minus all those titles we already talked about. And they are doing that.
Okay.
So I think that the only question that probably a lot of people have, or at least what I've been racking my brain over, is like what versions to get. I'm probably going to stick with what I have for Empire, and just keep my fingers crossed that eventually they do a quad. So I might hold off, or at least get a framing situation that's not terribly permanent until they could see if they can do a quad. But yeah, obviously I'm very excited about this release. If anyone has any questions, feel free to hit me up as far as any questions I could answer. I don't have a lot of like insider knowledge on this, but you know, Matt Ferguson's pretty transparent. He's been showing teases and talking about what's going to be available. So yeah, I'm very excited about this. I think that this has gotten a lot of attention. I've talked to people who are not Star Wars fans, and when I mentioned something like this poster, they're like, "Oh yeah, I saw that." So I think this is getting the same kind of reception, if not more, attention than Empire Strikes Back, and I think that he nailed it, he killed it, and um, I'm going to be very excited to add this to my collection,
Yeah, for sure.
and I'm hoping I'll also be able to get our Matt his opinions, because he is such a big Return of the Jedi fan. He wasn't able to make it tonight, but I am going to strong arm him into talking about this print and what he loves about it. We were briefly able to talk about it, just messaging back and forth. But yeah, I will obviously post more details when I find out more, as far as obviously they're going to release May the 4th. Pretty much guarantee that's going to be noon Eastern Standard Time through Bottleneck. I don't know if they're going to be doing a pre-sale link as far as emails go, but Matt Ferguson does have a private Facebook group. If you would like to join that and probably get more information. Other than that, feel free to hit me up if you have any questions. Yeah, I think, like I said, I can't say enough good things about this. And I think that we get lulls in Star Wars art, and then we get this crap where it's like, holy, like, how my wallet was not prepared. Just between this and Chris Valentine and Gabs, like, I just think that we had a lot of really excellent releases. Jack Gregory, and Bottleneck was also very impressed with, like, a lot of people loved Jack Gregory's first print and this one. So we've been very spoiled lately when it comes to Star Wars prints. We're almost at the hour and 23-minute mark. I don't want to keep rattling on. I've talked a lot tonight. But Jason, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? If you want to.
Nothing specific. Did you want to touch upon real quick? Just give people a heads up on the sideshow thing going on, or is that really not like? I didn't know if that's of interest, because I know it's kind of all over the place. A lot of it seems to be, from what I gather, a Friday night special. The fish is about to turn, so let's get it out at discount. But there's some really good deals going on for those who are interested in different properties and IPs. But yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, you know what? Let me bear with me. Maybe I could share my screen. I might freeze, so Jason, be prepared to talk on my behalf.
Yeah, for sure.
We can pull it up.
It's funny that that Jedi poster. Probably both agreed that like we expected to see the Emperor, and instead Vader was the front and center. But you still have that. He he doesn't he doesn't forget. He doesn't drop the ball. If you look at the base, it's hard because I'm doing it on my phone. But if you look at the base of the image, I pull it up on my computer, and you do see the Emperor. The Emperor is there, but it's just not front and center in your face. However, you still have him in your line of sight, and I really like that it was well thought through, because you have to think about too all these releases now, where you get Bottleneck and Acme and Mondo, and not only do you have to do something that really tells the story, and kind of delivers that emotion, that impact, tied to such a movie, but you're competing with a decade's worth of posters plus the originals. So like it's not an easy task, and I think sometimes we take that for granted. We don't take into consideration when we're looking at an image, whether we like it or not, what the artist had to go through to really make it unique. And that's good. That's something you gotta add into that mix. When you look at an image, is not just whether or not you like it, but what other challenges was the artist facing. And when you bring up like everybody from Ken Taylor to, I mean, there's just so many artists we could think of. It's hard. It's not easy to do.
I agree, and it's funny because I actually had mentioned that in my mind, I envisioned the Emperor being the big bad looming figure behind Luke. With I thought like maybe the Force lightning through his hands to be that like pop of color that we see with the typically ends up being the blaster fire. But Vader looks badass. You can't argue that. I think it was a great choice. But let me share my screen real quick. Okay. So I wasn't paying too close attention to this, but it's the Sideshow's, I think they're calling it their like Fine Art Expo, something like that, which is going
Yeah,
to.
do you know if this is a new thing, or does anybody in the comments know? Has this been something they've been doing, or?
So last year they didn't. I don't recall them saying it was an expo, but they did like a YouTube stream where it was that guy who's no longer with the company. I forget his name. The one with the gray hair. Uh, he just left the company recently. He walked around a gallery and featured, like, basically it was a gallery and just showed the various art that they had that was available or ones that had just been released.
Okay.
So I don't know if this is like their virtual equivalent of that, where I think they did do a YouTube live stream, but I was at work and I couldn't hop on. But I will say I think that the prints available tend to lean less so on the Star Wars side of things. But I did share a link in the group because it looked like they were doing buy one get one half off.
Yes.
I don't see that now, but I wonder. So they just announced this Bane, like a little while ago. It's not.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, the imagery is iconic. It's just I don't know if it's for me, but I'm also not a huge Bane fan. I think the artist, his last name Richard Long, I think. This is limited to 250, and 50 will be on canvas. You could RSVP to find out when it's going to be available. It's styled after Kelly Jones. I'm assuming that's a cover artist. I wonder if this was inspired by a comic cover.
Yeah, this is I'm seeing this a lot lately, and I actually I thought it would be something I'd be against, but I'm actually liking it. Mike Mayhew's a big artist who does the sort of renditions of previous cover art that was really popular, and it's almost like verbatim. He doesn't change up much other than making it a little bit of more his style, but it's pretty pretty in line with the original covers. But yeah, this is that image specifically is a very prominent introduction to Bane, initially. So but again, that's a hard piece. As nice as that is, that's a hard piece of display because you get to be like a fan. And depending on what your setting looks like, unless you have like a man cave that diverts around that style or aesthetic of Batman and collecting overall, like that's a hard piece to put on your wall. At least from my opinion.
Pull up this one. I was tempted by it for a while. Sorry, you could see all my pop-ups. But I also mentioned this because I thought this was, yep. So this is a release through Vice Press and Sideshow. So if it was a situation where this was ever sold out, you could always check back with Vice Press to see if they have it. But
My other hang up about Sideshow. My other hang up at Sideshow is their authorized signature. So, we've had this conversation a long time ago. I think when Steve was on, and I pointed out. I said, there's that beautiful image where they have like Leia, the famous print where she's got her arms behind her head. I forget the artist. She's a very prominent artist, but I don't like that Sideshow does the authorized. Yes. Yep. It's Olivia. But basically, so what I prefer when like Bottleneck or Mondo, when they release prints that are unsigned, they're unsigned. They're numbered, not by the artist, but they're hand numbered. But they don't put a facsimile signature on there. That for some reason, I prefer the signature be left out than for it to be a facsimile signature. I don't like a penciled in signature that wasn't penciled in by the artist. It just leaves a really bad taste in my mouth and makes me. I know I'm going a little too deep into it. Most people probably won't care, but I rather it just be left out and just have the print hand number. That's it. But Sideshow is pretty big on that. I would say 9 out of 10 of their prints, for the most part, have facsimile signatures, and that just is something that eats at me a little bit because they release some great stuff. They have some really nice images from time to time.
So this one's not a facsimile. This one is signed and includes a remark. So
nice. And there's a great image too.
I don't mean to mansplain to anyone, but this little doodle right here is often called a remark. And that's something new that I've only seen with Lee Bermejo with the Sideshow prints, but I hadn't seen a remark before they started with these Lee Bermejos. Only on the canvas though, so those canvases are pricey within themselves, and then of course you're also paying for the remark. That looks like Clayton Crane. I wonder if it is. This one's Jason Edmondson after The Killing Joke.
Oh, is that one available?
The Killing Joke? Yeah.
Open that for a second. What's the price on that one?
It's $95 for the Giclée unframed. It's 18 by 24. Presumably that's with the like it's not the live art is 18 by 24. And then they have an aluminum one that's 24 by 16. Why because it doesn't have the border. And then the Giclée on canvas is 25 by 17.
And what's the price on that?
The Giclée?
It's weird because there was an early release of this image, and it usually shoots around the 700-800 mark. That's like the normal range for it. So it's interesting to see that you can get it again because this is a great image. This is a really fun one and a nice one.
Yeah, Jason Edmondson does not shy away from the bright colors. He's having what is it? They just teased he's going to be doing a print with Bottleneck, and it might be my ignorance. I wasn't aware that he had done a print with Bottleneck before, but I think he's doing one for I think it's like Evil Dead or something like that. I'm sorry guys, I'm not into a lot of the horror movies, but the second I saw that Jason Edmondson was doing a print with Bottleneck, I got excited because I hope that he continues the Eyes Without a Face series with not Mondo. Oh, that's something. Jay, do you want to talk about Mondo real quick while we're just scrolling through there here? Is Goonies is Chris Valentine. If anyone's a
Yeah.
Goonies.
What do you want me to touch on?
Well, so this Dolly's nice. I'll leave this screen up even though we're gonna be talking crap about Funko. But so, and I know we're over the hour mark, so if anyone's watching, sorry you have to listen to me rant about this for a second. So I had posted about this when it first happened. It feels like over a month ago. But last year, Funko bought Mondo. And that raised concerns about the future of Mondo and how they would change things. Because Mondo is well known for their art prints, but also their vinyl and also their action figures. And I think they had dabbled in, I think, a statue or two. I remember Harley Quinn one that was pretty popular a few years ago. So a lot of people were very skeptical when Funko bought Mondo. And unfortunately, I think everyone's concerns came true in that I think it was a few of the basically like the founding members of Mondo, as far as like their print division, were let go. And it took about a week before Funko put out an official statement and said that it sounds like they, reading between the lines in their official statement, reading into things, that they had some creative differences with the founding members of Mondo. Basically, most of the print division, as far as the higher ups go, they argued that they had laid off a lot of staff, but that they had laid off staff in other parts of Funko, not just Mondo. And I thought that was weird to say. It's almost like they didn't deny that they had laid off most of the most important or integral folks at Mondo as far as their print division went. But I think they kind of skirted it by saying like, well, we laid off other people too. And I'm like, okay, that's strange to say. But one of the things that they mentioned, and I know Steve had commented on the post when I made it, is that they thought that Mondo's prints had become unobtainable in that they're small runs and they sell out quickly. And I don't disagree. And also, if you've been watching me on any of these shows, whether it's group therapy or this, I am definitely biased towards Bottleneck. I started my collecting with Bottleneck, and I love their customer service, and I think it's a testament to the artists that they work with. I've discovered a lot of artists that are my favorites only because of Bottleneck. That's not to say that Mondo doesn't work with excellent artists. They do. It's just for whatever reason, most of my money has always been spent with Bottleneck as opposed to Mondo. But you can't argue that Mondo really paved the way in the I think in, was it 2006 or so, when or early 2000s at least, that they started. So
The thing with, to just interject, I like what you said about Bottleneck, because Bottleneck has definitely stood true to both their artists and their clientele. Like you said, even during the show, you mentioned that they, for those who purchased the first Jack Gregory, got a pre-sale link to the second one. Like, taking the time to do things like that, it really makes a difference, and it keeps somebody like yourself, who's a really in-depth collector and buyer of prints, a loyal client. Mondo, and again, I'm not trying to get into conspiracy theories, but knowing some of the artists that work with them and some of the things that go on behind the scenes, some of the unobtainability wasn't just due to the short runs or the popularity. A lot of it was a lot of backdoor behavior that was happening, and it was becoming a huge issue. Because it was becoming a financial incentive. And I think, again, I don't want to start getting into these debates because there's a lot of hearsay and not a lot of factual, things, that are out there that people can say, hey, here's hard evidence. But at the same time, those are some of the factors that do come into play. I don't think it allows Funko to justify, like you said, it was a weird statement to say, hey, we let these guys go, but by the way, we let our guys go too. Okay, well, that doesn't rationalize, that may have been your intent all along. But yeah, the fear that everything was going to become sort of mass produced, they can use the excuse that things are unattainable and maybe bump it up a little bit. But there is that fear that every time they release a print now, are they going to be editions of 500? They're going to be editions of 1,000? And I feel like they're starting to like realize that they're upsetting people. Oh, let's soften the blow by saying we'll open it up at art gallery. So when we release a print, you'll be able to come in and see it and purchase it off the wall. And okay, well, what does that mean? And same thing with the records. Like everybody thought they were going to get rid of the vinyl. It's like, no, by the way, we're going to open a record press. And so, I mean, to continue what you were saying, I didn't mean to interject so harshly, but I do think some of the backdoor behavior that was happening at Mondo was part of the effect. But I don't think that was the main contributor, but it is something to note because that's what I started finding more frustrating. When I acquired the Ollie Moss set way back when, that is now, I feel absurd. It's like a $10,000-$15,000 set for a set of prints that were like $300.
Mm-hmm.
One of the conversations I had with Ollie early on was that they never expected the price to go as high as they did because the prints, don't get me wrong, it's a beautiful set, but it isn't anything to write home about. Like at the end of the day, it isn't the most amazing thing you've ever seen.
They were also giant edition sizes. Weren't they timed?
I don't know if that one was timed, but it wasn't small. I think their editions of 300 or 150, they definitely weren't timed, but they weren't small and they were easy to get at that time. But the problem is I'd say 25% of them were held back. And that's what affected the price so drastically. And it actually caused harm to Ollie at the time. It wasn't beneficial to him. It actually harmed the secondary market because it made things difficult next time around because people started getting into this mindset that like, well, I got to grab anything he puts out because it's just automatically going to skyrocket in value. Mm-hmm. And, this was before like collecting, intellectual property style art prints became like a really heavy thing. It was more of like a very niche sort of insider baseball kind of thing where you just had a small community of people doing it. And there was a lot of ramblings because you had a lot of people in the art community spilling over buying these IP style prints based on the artists that they liked and not necessarily the IPs that they liked. And it was because of the flipping in the market value. And Mondo did have a number of people that were holding pieces back and doing backdoor sales. I know this from personal experience. That's the only reason why I'm dancing around a little bit. But I've had personal experience where I knew the right people to be like, hey, this was released today. It was instantly sold out. But I knew, hey, I just got to ask this person and I get a set. And that type of behavior, you're not going to see Bottleneck pulling that. I mean, it's the opposite. If something gets released and sold out instantly and there's 30 of them on eBay, you start to see them drop off. So that Bottleneck's going and being like, oh, Joe's selling his on eBay again, and let's cancel this order, which isn't the best practice, but it's definitely better to know that your prints that you're working hard with these artists with are going to the people who actually want them and not somebody who just wants to make a quick buck. So again, we can go on and on about this forever, but it does get convoluted. And Funko coming in and buying something like Mondo seems like, oh, wow, that's a perfect match. But then at the same time, it's like, well, is it though? Was that the best choice? I don't know. The whole thing's weird. I feel like we can do a whole show on it.
Well, so I will say, like, Bottleneck has been, like, I remember years ago, I don't even remember what release it was, but they literally were posting screenshots of the back end of their website where they're like, these are the bot orders we're deleting. Like, we're getting rid of. And actually, I think it was it the Killing Joke print? There was one I got. It wasn't the variant. Was it the regular? I got a print from Bottleneck early on. And I remember it was in my cart, and then it wasn't in my cart. It sold out. I just kept hitting refresh. Because I was like, you know what? Maybe they're bots. Maybe they'll cancel some stuff. And I managed to get it. I've also had people ask me, like, hey, Bottleneck did a timed release and I totally missed it. Like, do you think I'm out? And I'm like, dude, just ask. Like, it's a timed edition. They haven't printed them yet. Like, the worst they could do is say no. And they've helped that customer out. And they were accommodating to that. So I wouldn't describe it as backdoor dealings, but I do think that, like, Bottleneck tries to help out their customers as best they can. And I can't attest to the customer service with Mondo because I think I only have 4 prints in my collection that were directly from Mondo. I will
Well,
say,
what you're speaking about, though, is less about backdoor on bottleneck side and them knowing that it's going directly to a fan. Like, I know what you mean, like being able to hit them up via email and say, "Hey, you have it," but they know who they're dealing with. Like when you send an email, they're like, oh, "Okay," like they know who they're dealing with. They know that you generally want it, that you're not on the secondary market flipping them, and so.
yeah.
Mondo, there was a financial incentive to purposely hold things back and manipulate the market. And I mean, even some of what's the one that what's that series that Steve picked up a while ago? That and now again, crazy money, 8 grand for the set of them. It's like those were heavily manipulated. And anybody who wants to step up and say, "Oh no, I know they weren't. I know for a fact they weren't." No, well they were. They were heavily manipulated through Mondo's actions and stuff like that. Like it makes it frowned upon, but it worked out to their benefit because, granted, 90% of the stuff they released was pretty amazing stuff, but they released some dog shit here and there, and even the dog shit stuff sold out instantly. You can't touch it. You can't get it. Unless you're sitting there trigger finger ready to go at the second the clock drops, it's gone. And that type of practice, it makes it hard. It makes it hard. And I feel like it creates a huge debate of, who agrees, who disagrees, who thinks it's a good move, who doesn't think it's a good move. But yeah, it's tricky.
Well,
I don't know. And
not
I
to
tip
I
my
don't
hat to somebody like Bottleneck.
I don't want to like shit on what Mondo used to be because they were like pioneers in the industry, and even though
Oh,
I
for
wasn't,
sure. Yeah, you're right. For sure. I do got to be careful with that.
I
For
do think
yeah.
it was like a titan in the industry and quite depressing what happened. But this was the statement I have on the screen as to what they put out, and they mentioned that there's misinformation, and that they consider the runs to be extremely limited on the posters, often under 150 posters per release, and that they were basically just for flippers and not for fans. Um, I just don't know logistically how feasible it is if they are going to decide to start doing posters at incredibly high edition sizes. And by that I mean like, so Vice Press is trying this with they're calling it oh, what are they calling it? God, it was right there. They're not open edition, but they'll do an A2 size. I think that's like 16 and a half by 24, and they'll do 1,000, and they'll have certificate of authenticity, but they're on the smaller side. And I think they're doing this because they're equipped for it. In my experience, when Bottleneck has had large releases, like timed releases, they tend to get delayed. So
Yeah.
do I have faith that Funko is going to be able to deliver on their promise to have more obtainable art prints and higher releases or higher edition sizes at the same level of quality that us print freaks would expect? I don't know. It remains to be seen. And with COVID and dealing with like paper shortages and ink shortages, I think they're in for a rude awakening as to what they're truly capable of. And the thing that you can't argue, like no insider baseball situation here, is that there are a ton of artists that have come out and said that they are not touching Mondo with a 10-foot pole because they didn't work with Mondo. They worked with the people behind Mondo. And when
Yeah,
they
they worked with the small handful of the relationships that they built were important. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So they burned a lot of bridges, I think, in making that decision. So I think it remains to be seen if those folks who were let go end up doing something on their own. But I mean, I'm heartbroken about it just because, like I said, they're titans in the industry. Do I think it's going to affect how I collect very often? Not really. But a lot of artists came out and showed art that they had done for Mondo that they knew was never going to get produced because they're not willing to work with Mondo anymore. And I think that is just disheartening and a disservice to the whole community. I appreciate the artist standing in solidarity with these folks that just lost their livelihoods, but I think that people are still very upset with what happened, and I don't think that Mondo is going to be the same, regardless of how you spin it, as to whether or not these prints are going to be more obtainable to folks, or better. I think that there's more evidence to suggest that these were all the bad decisions and were not in the best interests of the fans and the artists involved. Then there is hope for the future when it comes to this. I think it's Mondo in name only, and that
Yeah, pretty much. That's a good way of saying it. Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not saying like don't buy anything from Mondo in the future. I just know that a lot of the artists that I've appreciated for a long time, they're not going to touch Mondo with a 10-foot pole.
Well, at least now, anything they release, you can go to Hot Topic and pick up the Chase variant.
Oh,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
find it in landfill because it's cheaper to send Funko Pops to a landfill than it is to
Yeah, exactly. Donate them.
the record pressing factory in San Diego. I'm like, cool. Does that mean you're gonna fucking bring MondoCon back? Like, I don't. So anyway, I think I wanted to talk about this. You're right. It could have been a whole show in and of itself, but I do think that there's certainly been a lot of conversations. I think that the consensus that I've seen amongst the art print communities I'm a part of and the artists that I follow is that none of this is good. That none of this was the right decision, and that it sucks for all involved: the fans, the people who just lost their livelihoods, the artists that built relationships with Mondo, that have now gone up in flames. So we'll see. There's this is another show I plan on doing in the future, but I would like to do a show based on just featuring some of the galleries, because I talk a lot about Bottleneck because I'm biased, kind of like I talk a lot about Matt Ferguson because I'm biased. But I would like to talk about other galleries that are not specific, like just not Bottleneck, to kind of like expand people's horizons and make them understand that there's more options than just Bottleneck and Mondo. But I'm glad we brought this up, but I didn't want to end on a depressing topic about Mondo basically being defunct. But yeah, the sideshow deals. It looks like Aaron said that the BOGOs for Marvel and DC prints, and that everything else, like the Star Wars, is 20% off. So not bad.
Yeah, no, not bad at all.
But yeah,
and I think it's an opportunity for them to show some like new and upcoming releases, like you said, right?
Sorry, yeah, I picked an excellent time to take a drink.
I know. I was like, whoa, that was a long pause.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to ignore you, but I think they're clearing the way. Sideshow's clearing the way for more art prints. And I'm always going to be a fan of that. I'm just not. I don't have a lot of Sideshow prints in my collection, but I think that that's not a bad thing. I think, like I said, we got some great Star Wars releases recently and upcoming. So again, like I said, if I find out more regarding Matt Ferguson's release, like actual photo, like images of, presumably they're going to be 24 hours before May the 4th, I will be posting them in the in our Facebook group. So if you are not over there, check that out, because it's a lot easier for me to post something in the group than it is to do a print show. And thanks for bearing with me regarding the print show. I would like to do it more consistently, but like I said, life stuff gets in the way. I think going forward, and I'm going to talk to Jason and Matt about this, like it might be a situation where I wouldn't be opposed to, as much as I freaking hate doing it, doing like a short recorded video just showing an art print that's going to be released the following day, if it means that people get more of a heads up that it's going to be released, because I do tend to talk about these prints after they've already sold out. But I'll keep you guys posted. And then so for the rest of the week, we're not doing group therapy on Friday. Steve actually had a conflict in his schedule, and we weren't able to do it Saturday either. So it looks like we're pushing it to next Friday. So, and we'll probably talk about Celebration a bit more. And I'm trying to think what else. And likely the Mando finale. But if you want like our instant, at least Matt's and I instant thoughts on that, you could watch Shelter in Space from last night. But so Dylan says the Indiana Jones, he's got, whoops. The Indiana Jones Pursue the Ark by Jerry Vanderstilt. Yeah, Dylan, if it makes you feel any better, I got the Drew Struzan Hellboy Golden Army with the foil title when it was 20% off, and I think now it's 50% off. And I was like, but it's a beautiful poster. I'm glad I have it. I'm trying to figure out if I could put it behind this guy that I just got. But if Jason doesn't have anything else, I think we'll go ahead and end this here. We're almost at the 2-hour mark.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for bearing with us on our TED Talks and our rants. I hope you got some ideas, and I apologize in advance to everyone's credit scores and wallets regarding regarding some of these releases, but sorry, not sorry. It's a great time to collect Star Wars prints, I feel. But
thanks for hanging out, and thanks for the kind comments and the feedback. I think yeah, CC. I mean, like I tell you, people hit me up directly, even though this is kind of your show. It is informative, and I think people get a lot from this. They get to learn what's being dropped and when, how to store things, when to buy things, when to look out for things, how to look out for things. So it would be nice if we could pick back up and be a little bit more consistent with this, because I do think it's one of the more helpful and informative shows that we do on this channel. So, and I enjoy doing it. I mean, I could talk art all night. So,
and on that note, thanks for the kind words, Jason, and everyone else. Appreciate it, and have a good night. We'll probably talk to you next Friday, if not sooner.
yeah.
Bye.
All right, folks. Good night.